Adoption of the minutes for March 24th, 2026. Vice Chair Joy, have you had a chance to review the minutes from yesterday? Would you like to move them? All right, Representative Joy has moved the minutes for March 24th, 2026. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. The minutes for March 24th, 2026 are adopted. So welcome to committee, everyone. Today we're going to hear a presentation on implementation of local homeless prevention aid, which was passed in the 2021 session. Are you guys still working on your technology setup?
Yes.
All right.
But
excellent.
Hey, it looks
Nope.
like we're good.
Are you good?
Yes.
Okay. I will turn it over to you. Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself as you get started with your testimony.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Nathan Jessen. I represent the Minnesota Inter-County Association. Mike is a group of 17 counties throughout the state representing suburban counties and regional centers. We're here to talk today. We've got a group of us from across the state to talk about local homelessness prevention aid. This program was established on a bipartisan basis in the 2021 tax bill to help ensure that no child is homeless by keeping families from losing housing and then helping those experiencing homelessness find housing. We've got testifiers from a couple different counties to talk about how it works in their area, but one of the great things about this program is that all 87 counties across Minnesota and every tribal nation receive funding from it to prevent homelessness in their communities. Included in your packets is a 2025 report from all 87 counties specifying how those funds were spent, but I did want to call out some examples. In Washington County, these funds pay for community service navigators. They provide points of access services, whether it's phone, email, or walk-ins to the public to help them with specific needs or help them get connected to programs and benefits that they may not be aware of but are eligible for. In Stearns County's been working with school districts across the county to help families experiencing homelessness and families at risk of homelessness. Their social workers meet weekly with liaisons at school districts to review referrals and coordinate services for families. And in Crow Wing County, they use these funds to connect families with necessary services to make sure they're maintaining that family's stability in their homes and providing outreach to prevent eviction and obtain affordable housing. So I would say a common thread here is that counties are using these funds whenever possible to prevent this issue on the front end because that's better and easier for children, their families, and everyone. And with that, I would turn it over to the next testifier.
Thank you, Mr. Jessen. Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself as you get started.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for this opportunity to speak. My name is George Farrell. I am the Director of Community Social Service and Behavioral Health for Anoka County. Early in 2023, we conducted stakeholder meetings with school districts, community stakeholders, community organizations, county departments, and individuals with lived experience to determine how best to allocate these funds. Next slide, please. This collaboration planning identified the greatest needs in homeless prevention, outreach, support services, resource navigation, and emergency shelter. In 2026, Anoka County receives approximately $1.4 million in local homeless prevention aid to support these efforts. We use these funds to fill gaps and supplement funding to expand programs, such as our Anoka County Housing Help Desk, outreach services, hotel shelter programs, eviction court support services, rental assistance, housing support services connected to child protection cases, homeless navigation for youth connected to school districts, additional funding for emergency assistance, and family-specific supports. I would like to highlight our collaboration with our school districts and local charter schools. Our stakeholder engagement with them was quite special and surprising. They provided us with a lot more information about directly what they were seeing with their families in these schools. We had 13 districts in Anoka County and we've got several charter schools that were in need of help. The combined funding for 2026 for the schools is just under $500,000. These amounts were based on the homeless counts that the Department of Education produces, and we created a scenario where we could account for the funding percentage based on that, and that seems to have held true over the years. Local homeless prevention aid allows schools to take immediate action to support their students, their families, and while connecting them to additional longer-term services. I'd like to share 3 stories from our local school partners about how the funding impacts lives. The first one, a student in our district confided to the building social worker that he and his grandmother had been without electricity for a few months. They were trying to keep food in a cooler and get by until they could pay the bill. The social worker reached out to the grandparent and found out that she had taken her grandson in because his parents were struggling with their own issues and were not in a place to take care of him. She was living on a very limited income and fell behind trying to take care of him, food, clothing, increased utilities, and had prioritized paying her rent over paying her utilities. We were able to use local homeless prevention aid funds to pay off the owed amount and pay them up for 2 months. We also paid 2 months of rent just to assure that they would have a small cushion going forward. We worked with the Anoka County programs and community partners to help the grandmother apply for additional support for herself and the student. In the second scenario, a student in one of our specialty programs is the parent of 2-year-old twin boys. She had been living with her mom, and she and her boys were kicked out of her mom's place. The student had no place to go and was literally sleeping in the stairwells of apartments with her young children. We were able to connect her with the Homework Starts with Home program, and she worked with a housing case manager to apply for a housing choice voucher and find a place for her and her boys to live. With local homeless prevention aid funds, we were able to pay the security deposit and first month's rent that wasn't covered by the voucher, so that she and her boys could have a safe and affordable place to stay. In the third scenario, a teacher reached out to a building social worker about a student whose grades were dropping. The student was missing a lot of school. The social worker connected with the parents and found out that the father, who was the primary support, had been in a serious car accident and had not been able to work. His employer did not offer any benefits, and so the family was going without his paycheck. The mom had just recently given birth and was home with the baby. The high school student, in an attempt to help her family, had been picking up extra shifts at work to bring in additional income. We were able to pay off the back mortgage payments for them and pay a month forward to give the dad time to recover and get back to work. This also allowed the high school daughter to not work as much and concentrate on school. These interventions were reported over the past year. Since the beginning of the 2026 school year, beginning of 2026, they have utilized these funds to assist families affected by the recent federal immigration enforcement efforts. Local Homeless Prevention Aid is a program that offers flexibility so local communities can define parameters and target funding where families need it, using very low barriers and strong, warm handoffs to longer-term support programs. Thank you for your support in meeting the needs of these families.
Thank you very much. Up next, Dave Dunn, please introduce yourself for the record as you get started.
Yeah, good morning, Madam Chair. My name is Dave Dunn, and I serve as the Housing Director for Olmsted County. And first of all, just thank you for allowing me the opportunity to be here today. When I heard this hearing was coming up, I did everything I could to have an opportunity to come before you and share the wonderful things that Local Homeless Prevention Aid has done in Olmsted County. The first thing I want to point out that is really unique and innovative about this program is that it's dedicated flexible funding to each county. So all 87 counties have an annual allocation, and we have the flexibility to meet local needs. That's important as needs change, as individual students have different needs, as we see things. You can see here, though, what we have done is we've placed those into 3 buckets: eviction prevention, holistic case management, and emergency response to create stable housing. Our eviction prevention efforts are a partnership with Rochester Public Schools, where we use the local homeless prevention aid and Rochester Public Schools McKinney-Vento liaison to connect families facing eviction with eviction prevention funding sources. It's been extremely successful. As you can see here, in 2025, we were able to prevent 90 of 94 evictions collectively, so a 96% success rate. So when we talk about things that work, this is an intervention that has been very successful. But it's not just about the eviction prevention, it's also about the holistic case management. It's connecting families to resources that they desperately need. We're able to do this with 3 social workers funded by local homeless prevention aid that we can place right into the school districts in Olmsted County. The partnerships and opportunities that we can build are just priceless, and the connections we're making amongst different institutional entities has been top-notch. Not just with schools, but then also we've been able to assist families in seeking employment, as we know that ultimately it's employment and income that will help us as we try to get these families stabilized. And the third category is the emergency response to stable housing. So we've done 3 things in this area. The first is hotel stays. Really, that's where we have the family that calls at 4 o'clock on a Friday and is in a desperate need of a situation for this weekend. We're able to get that family stabilized. In our partnerships with Family Service Rochester, we're now able to put them into family shelter, provide them with case management, and allow them to stabilize and start to work toward a future. And I think that's where the last part of this for us, the rental assistance, has been really helpful, because that allows us then to stay with those families, provide that longer-term rental assistance with the case management, allowing the families to thrive based on what their needs are. So just this last slide is information from Rochester Public Schools, their dropout rates, and the purple line on the top are for students who had experienced homelessness. And so you can see that since the program launched in September of 2022 for us, we've seen a significant decrease in dropout rates among our students that are experiencing homelessness. So this is still early, but these local flexible interventions work, and I just wanted to highlight that impact and thank you for creating this program. And just as I close, I'll just kind of tell one story of a Stewartville mom who's going to school to be a social worker. She has 2 kids right now in school and was facing eviction. We saw her on the eviction prevention list. We were able to connect her to eviction prevention efforts. Those eviction prevention efforts have now led to rental assistance, and mom is in school and will be wrapping up her undergraduate education here this spring with the idea of hopefully becoming a social worker. So when we talk about families and success, that's all across Minnesota, and these funds have been just instrumental in providing that support. So thank you for the funds, and respectfully request to continue it because it has been extremely successful.
Thank you very much. Welcome back to the committee. Please introduce yourself as you get going.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. It's great to be with you this morning. My name is Matt Hilgart. I work for the Association of Minnesota Counties. AMC represents all of Minnesota's 87 counties. I'm smiling because I am delighted to share some of the success stories of this program. I know many members sitting at the committee tables today had a role or played a part in the passage of this bill originally, and I know that you have members of your communities that are benefiting from this. I think you heard from our testifiers already the thoughtfulness and intentionality surrounding just what goes into actually creating these programs, but the core component of the flexibility to meet people where they're at in critical moments. The second thing you'll hear from us, as well as the folks who will come from community to testify, is the partnerships. This is one of those government programs that is not entirely government, right? It is partnerships with local providers. It is partnerships with our schools. It's a really great safety net that comes together that encapsulates the best of our communities. I'm just here to share two stories, and I'm doing this for a variety of reasons. The first, because stories matter. They recenter us and why we're creating these programs. The second is the stories come from rural Minnesota, and I feel that sometimes there's misconceptions about what rural poverty is or isn't in rural Minnesota. And third, I think that both these examples are just great examples of flexibility used to prevent something far worse from happening. So the first one is from a dad who a county employee encountered who had an unexpected gap in employment. He was able to find employment eventually, but he fell behind in their mortgage payment. He had 2 kids. So they were able to connect with this dad. They knew that the kids would be in trouble with school, and they were to provide housing security for a short period of time. But what makes me happy about the story, too, is the dad came back to the county afterwards and was just so entirely grateful and said, how can I pay this back? What do I owe you in response? And the county let them know, you should thank members of the Minnesota legislature since they had approved these funds, and that they encouraged to reach out to the legislators. The second story that I want to share comes from county social worker, Miss Leaf, who said she reached out to a couple people just to see if she could share some stories, and she provided one with me. This is from a person who said, the funding came at the perfect time, as right after it came through, my van also broke down. I was able to not stress about paying rent and was able to focus on working overtime to get my van fixed, instead of trying to figure out how to work overtime to get my van fixed and not get evicted. I'm completely up to date with rent and have a working vehicle. I had another client in the past tell me that this was life-saving and sobbed over the phone when I told her we were able to cover what had been requested. I know that's not direct client feedback, but that has really stuck with me. So again, these are stories in greater Minnesota, but it really underscores that aside from programs that Mr. Dunn and Mr. Burrell have kind of outlined, where it's very tailored programmatically, there's diverse components of it, there's also just people meeting needs where they're at. I know 2 years ago I told the story about Mower County, where an individual, we had found someone parked in the parking lot for several nights. I forgot if it was a Walmart parking lot or something. And the county sheriff had actually said, hey, this isn't right, something's going on here. Had connected with the social workers in the county, and it was a family who just didn't have housing. These funds were set up to get them secure housing. So I just want to thank the legislature for the use of these funds. I'm excited to hear what community members will be advocating and testifying on too, but from a county perspective, we are absolutely supportive of continuing this program. Thank you, Madam Chair and others.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Hilgart. Thank you to all the testifiers. We're going to move into hearing on the bill now. House File 4561. Representative Norris is going to take over the chair. Thanks, Rep. Norris.
All right, and as Chair Gomez gets settled up there, Chair Gomez moves that House File 4561 be laid over for possible inclusion in the 2026 taxes bill. Chair Gomez, to your bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Chair Davids, members of the committee, for hearing House File 4561. So we just heard a conversation about what the implementation of local homeless prevention aid has looked like across the state. And I hope everybody has a chance to look at the report that was included in your packet, because all of us represent counties and all of the work for our constituents is represented in this report. And you heard you heard a big breadth of work that's done with these funds each year from our testifiers. Shelter operations, assistance with food and utilities and rent, and case management and street outreach and mortgage assistance and helping foster youth and unaccompanied youth who are experiencing homelessness, building partnerships between schools and counties and care providers, helping get documents replaced, helping families do their laundry, these things that maybe, we take for granted if you are not living with your kids in a car, for example. I think this is, so I authored this bill before I was the chair, and when I started, my first version of the bill was pretty prescriptive. It talked about, I based it on, I thought I was smart, I based it on a program that existed that's been really successful called Homework Starts with Home. And so it was sort of like it has to do these things for this population. And as it moved through the legislative process, and at that time, Chair Marquardt was the chair in the House, and I think Chamberlain maybe was the Senate chair, a Republican senator. They removed a lot of the prescriptiveness in my original version of it, and they made sure that it went to every county in our state. And it still is, it's still formula-based like a lot of our local aids are, so that, counties that have a higher proportion, specifically of children experiencing homelessness, get more money to address that. But, you heard our local government partners talk about the fact that this is a flexible general purpose aid being the real kind of key, and I think that is represented very well in this report, is that, in cases, we heard our local government partners talk about, when there's an emergency, a real emergency in our community, our partners are able to respond. And I think that, like, we talk a lot about helping out people who are struggling, helping with affordability. The sad reality is that there's such a big disconnect between the cost of housing and the wages that people earn in our world, that so many of our neighbors are one or two, financial catastrophes away from being in a van with their kids in a Walmart parking lot where nobody ever wants to be. And so, so the proposal in front of us in House File 4561 would simply align this local government aid with all of the other local government aids that exist. There are 13 of them in our statutes, from obviously LGA and CPA are sort of the big ones, but there are township aids, aquatic invasive species aids, housing aids, riparian protection aids. None of them have expiration dates. None of them do. The one that helps homeless families has an expiration date. And this has no general fund costs this year, and I would hope that we can align this with the rest of the aids, that we can recognize the incredible work that is being done in communities across this state, heroic work by service providers and by local government partners to meet people in their most, in some of their toughest moments, and that we would think it's at least as important as maintaining, to maintain support for local homeless prevention efforts by counties as it is to maintain into perpetuity important aid related to aquatic invasive species, riparian protection, soil and water conservation districts, and other things. So that's the bill, Mr. Chair, and I think there are a couple of testifiers.
Great, thank you, Chair Gomez. We do have a couple of testifiers, and we're going to be tight on time today, so I'll ask our testifiers to stick to a strict 2-minute limit on their testimony. The first is Ash Littles. Welcome to the committee. Once you get seated, please introduce yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Just go ahead and talk.
Good morning. Hello, Chair. Hello, Chair, and committee members. My name is Ash Littles. I'm a fellow with the Minnesota Coalition for the Homeless and the current sitting president on Heading Home Ramsey's Youth Advisory Board. But a couple of years ago, no one would have seen me as a leader. They would have seen a young person in active addiction that the system was willing to give up on. But I am living proof that you can build a life beyond just struggle and survival. I've learned the hard way that housing instability and homelessness doesn't send a calendar invite, it just shows up. That is why local homeless prevention aid is so critical. It allows communities to show up faster before crisis escalates into homelessness. LHPA is a Minnesota state program created in 2021 to help counties prevent family and youth homelessness. It can be used for rental assistance, utility assistance, eviction prevention, and move-in support. That can look like covering application fees and deposits that many people are unable to afford. LHPA removes these barriers so youth and families can move into stable housing instead of cycling through crisis. LHPA also explicitly includes unaccompanied youth, which matters deeply to me. I've been the young person who had to couch hop and had to stay in unsafe environments and situations because I had nowhere else to go. The new changes of LHPA would give both counties and tribal governments the ability to fund programs that offer youth real, stable alternatives. It supports families with children through 12th grade, people living in overcrowded housing, those paying more than 50% of their income towards rent, and those lacking a regular and adequate nighttime residence. Ultimately, ending homelessness starts with prevention. My experiences and the stories of youth and families that I know show that LHPA is more than just funding, it's a preventative solution. It recognizes that we need to invest in the right supports at the right time and meet people where they are. Strengthening and sustaining LHPA means preventing homelessness and creating stability, safety, and a future for Minnesota families and youth. Thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you so much for your testimony, fellow Littles. Next is Jordan May, and I believe Jordan May is joining us via Zoom. Please, let's see, we have, hold up. All right, please proceed with your testimony and introduce yourself for the record.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Jordan May. I'm the executive director of the Red Lake Homeless Shelter. I'm a Red Lake band member. Red Lake is a founding member of the Minnesota Tribal Collaborative to prevent and end homelessness. Local homeless prevention aid has been a very valuable resource to Red Lake and all the tribes in Minnesota. Some stats here in 2025, using the 2024 Local Homeless Prevention Aid funding, Red Lake served 137 people with funding for rental assistance and 131 people for utility assistance to prevent eviction and disconnection. In 2024, using 2023 Local Homeless Prevention Aid funding, 49 people were served with rental assistance and 142 people for utility assistance. And we used some of the funding for a staff position to provide housing navigation and case management in agreement with our local Red Lake Housing Authority. The Local Homeless Prevention Aid funding has prevented a total of 459 households so far from losing their housing because they were at risk of homelessness. And most of those households have been served directly on the Red Lake Nation, with more applications and households to be served. Homelessness continues to impact Native populations far more than any other population. In Minnesota, Native Americans are 30 times more likely to be homeless than a non-Native American person. And that data was consistent from Minnesota Interagency Council on Homelessness website. Local homeless prevention aid is very flexible and the reporting is easy. The funding is easy to administer and works great for families who aren't eligible for other programs such as Family Homeless Prevention and Assistance Program. The Minnesota Department of Revenue staff have been supportive and responsive to questions. One of the best features of this program is that if a tribe can't use all of their funding, that tribe can send their unused funding to another tribe. That feature allows tribes to further their collaboration and better serve their communities. I want to thank you for your time, and all tribal nations in Minnesota are in support of House File 4561. Thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you very much, Executive Director May. Our third testifier also joining us via Zoom is Jane Lawrence. Please introduce yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Good morning. I'm Jane Lorenz, the Assistant Coordinator for the Minnesota Tribal Collaborative. The Minnesota Tribal Collaborative is 10 tribes working together to prevent and end homelessness for their communities. I'm here to speak in favor of House File 4561. The changes to local homeless prevention aid have no cost. Those changes can be summarized as follows. Requesting and tribal government added to subdivision 4B. Subdivision 6A would direct the Commissioner of Revenue to appropriate unused funding back to counties and tribes, and unused tribal funding would go to tribes, and unused funding from counties would go to other counties. Subdivision 7A, we're requesting to push the reporting dates out to make it easier for everyone, revenue, counties, and tribes to report. Reporting is now due the end of December, and that can be difficult with the holidays. Pushing the reporting out by a month would be much easier for everyone. We're also requesting a modified reporting form. The data coordinator for the Minnesota Tribal Collaborative has designed an easier form for reporting, and revenue has found this new form acceptable. The Minnesota Department of Revenue staff, Darren and Andrea specifically, are very easy to work with. They're responsive and thoughtful when we have questions about the funding or reporting. All the tribes in Minnesota have found local homeless prevention aid to be an invaluable resource and tool to prevent and address homelessness. Thank you today for your time.
Thank you, Assistant Coordinator Lorenz. Any other members of the public who wish to testify on this bill? Seeing none, we'll move to member discussion. Chair Davids.
Thank you, Chair Norris. Two questions, one for House Fiscal. We talk about in the bill money that hasn't been spent yet. How much is still on the bottom line?
Is that Ms. Highmark?
Mr. Chair and members, just a clarification question. You're asking how much money is still on the bottom line for the local homeless prevention aid?
Chair Davids.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, yes.
Ms. Highmark.
Mr. Chair, I can look into this and get back, get a response to you from the Department of Revenue. My impression is that this aid is paid out, is it twice a year with the counties? And then any aids that are unspent are then returned to the Commissioner of Revenue, and I'd be happy to get those numbers to you.
That'd be great. I'm
Chair
asking
Davids.
pretty tough questions today.
I think Chair Gomez wanted to try to help answer that question.
Yeah, sorry, I'm glad that Ms. Lorenz was on because she basically explained my bill, which I'd neglected completely to do in my opening comments. So my apologies, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so this bill does three things. It removes the sunset from the aid. It aligns the treatment of the tribal portion with the way that the county portion of local homeless prevention aid is used. And so the way that we designed the program from the beginning was that if a county has unspent funds, it goes kind of back into the local homeless prevention aid formula and gets kicked back out with the next disbursement, so that the money, so that, you know, if a county doesn't want to or can't spend the money, that it goes to homeless prevention elsewhere in the state. And so we just are aligning the tribal government allocation with the way that we treat the county allocation. And then the other thing is, it just pushes back the date of the report so that it's not right at the end of the year and it's at the end of January instead of December. So my apologies for not saying that.
Chair Davids.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for that explanation, Chair Gomez. So basically, there really isn't any unspent money. It just goes back through the cycle.
Chair Gomez.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to check with revenue if there are recipients who don't spend it. The sense that I get is there's more need than there are resources in most places in the state. So I think this is just like, you know, if there was a situation where, you know, a county or tribe couldn't use the money, that it wouldn't just go back to the general fund, it would stay in this area.
And I think Ms. Highmark has additional information for us. Ms. Highmark.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And for 2023 local homeless prevention aid, there was approximately $344,000 in aid that was returned in fiscal 25 to the program.
Thank you. Anything
Okay.
further, Chair Davids?
Yes, thank you. And if you look at the property tax, local homeless prevention aid, expiration repeal, from the Department of Revenue here, and I've heard it from several testifiers that this thing costs the general fund nothing. Well, not this biennium, but if money's being paid out, it does cost us something. So just to point that out, and I see what they're doing on the accounting, but it does cost money. It just doesn't show up on this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep. Representative Joy.
Thank you, Chair Norris. And one of the things, you know, we just heard there was 344,000 returned in aid, and I see on the sheets that we had, that some of the sheets we've received, is there was $251,480 for Beltrami County set out. And then when you go through this report we just got here, this big book, Beltrami County used zero of anything. They have zeros on all their stuff. So we talk about what's came back. So if I kind of look at the $344,000, $251,480 from Beltrami County was never used, but was dedicated out. So I kind of would like a real breakdown that shows by county what they've, if we could, and for like the past 2 years. So we could kind of get an understanding of how much is going out and coming back, you know, because when you look at Beltrami County, I was very surprised to see none of it's been used, but yet they were allocated $251,400 and they didn't use any of it. So it's kind of surprising to me. It's like, well, and as Representative Gomez says, or Chair Gomez says, is, you know, we move it around to other areas. And I think it's a good thing for us to look at these programs and look at what's going on and what's working and what's not, you know, just basically a checks and balance type thing. So I just want to note that. Thank you.
Thanks, Vice Chair Joy. Chair Gomez.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So my reading of that, and I think we should just follow up with Beltrami County, because if you read in the boxes, it talks about them setting up an affordable housing trust fund with their money, which is something that, you know, meets the requirements of the program. It talks about the challenges of getting that set up. And my understanding is that in the zeros there are not necessarily about no money from the allocations used, but that because of the challenges of setting up that affordable housing trust fund for the first time, that they kind of like weren't, they didn't have a number, the zero was number of people served. And so excuse me, so I think that we should just, you know, follow up with the county. Maybe Mr. Hilgart can help us just to get a little bit more detail about that particular one, because it actually stuck out to me too. As I was flipping through it, I was like, oh, that's a novel use of this money that I didn't see elsewhere. Maybe there are other counties that do it, but also, yeah, the zeros stuck out to me too, but I appreciate that.
Great. Representative Robbins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Chair Gomez, for this bill. Yeah, I don't know, maybe it's for you or Mr. Hilgard, but I was stunned by this report, or maybe it's someone from Department of Revenue, that there was no discussion of the money per county anywhere. So, like, I don't know where we'll find that, but it's not in the report that we have in front of us. So it's really hard to ascertain what sort of the impact of these dollars. We see the number of people served, but we have no idea what was spent. So I would like to request that information.
I think Ms. Highmark has some information for us.
Mr. Chair and Representative Robbins, the Department of Revenue posts on their website the certification amounts per county. And so you would be able to see the amount of aids that the counties would receive.
Representative Robbins.
Thank you, I appreciate that, but it's not really helpful unless it's in the report and we can compare the numbers served to the dollars we're getting. So that would be my first thing. And then a question, if I may, for Chair Gomez. So how does this money that the counties get like work in practice? Is it last dollar money after they use LIHEAP or after they use other rental assistance programs? Like practically, where does this fall in how they're helping with the other programs that we already have?
Chair Gomez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So first, I think that's a great suggestion that the distribution to counties and tribal governments should be in the very front of this report. I hope that the department is willing to take that amendment to it. As you identified LIHEAP in particular, the Low-Income Housing Heating Assistance Program. So there are, as we mentioned, there are a number of, uses of this money. There is no requirement that it's last dollar in. As you heard from our local government partners, and as you can kind of see if you read through the report, this really it fills in gaps. And so, if it is a way for counties to be very responsive, for, to meet people where they are, there is, as you can see, if you kind of can read through the underlying statute, that we really did, after negotiations, as I mentioned, between the two parties, come to a very flexible funding source for counties. Thank you.
Anything further, Representative Robbins?
So where does this show up, like in county budgets, so we could tie it back? How do we follow the money?
Chair
Yep.
Gomez.
Thank you.
Looks
Yeah,
like
I would ask
Mr.
that.
Hilgert's getting
Not an
up.
expert on county budgets, but I'm sure Mr. Hilgard is.
Mr. Hilgert, if you could reintroduce yourself for the record and then answer the question, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Matt Hilgard with the Association of Minnesota Counties. Going on year 10, but I'm still not an expert on county budgets, but I'm really grateful that Mr. Dave Dunn will be here because I think that gets to both questions, Chair Robbins, which is you're asking how we use these when we have things already like EGA or ESP or other programs that theoretically do similar work. I would say that my limited knowledge in this area would be that these programs are very structurally bound by certain requirements that, as Representative Gomez said, we're able to more immediately and more flexibly either add on or assist people that will also eventually be qualifying for this or wouldn't have met qualifications, or in the timeliness that we need, like for cash assistance application processing, which can be sometimes timely. We need this now. We need it. A school counselor has called us and said there's a kid who doesn't have a place to go sleep. Unfortunately, emergency assistance sometimes doesn't allow us the processing time to do that. So it's that first question that you asked, I was thinking about it as I was sitting in the audience, is a more nuanced question. The second one of how this shows up in our budget, I'll ask Mr. Dunn if he has comments on both of those. But
Mr. Dunn, if you could reintroduce yourself and then proceed with the question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Dave Dunn. I am the Olmsted County Housing Director. And to answer a little bit about both questions, as far as the budget goes, it is an allocation that the county receives twice a year. So that allows us then to administer the funds and reimburse ourselves as need be. So it does show up in our budget lines. And then as we kind of use the funding and we report back to the state at the end of the year, we're able to dedicate where that funding goes. And kind of your other question too about kind of how does this fit in? You know, it's really it fits in where it's needed. And I think what I mean by that is that there's so limited amount of resources. You know, nationwide, only 1 in 4 families who need rental assistance receive it. In Olmsted County, that number is only 15% of families that would be qualified for rental assistance receive it. So we're really doing everything we can to manage as many families in crisis with the resources that are needed. And so a lot of times it's what's in front of us, what has the different guidelines. And since no one program has enough resources, it's really about, okay, what are the rules here, 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 and here? Which one does that family qualify for, and which one can address that situation that the family's in, whether that's an immediate emergency need like tonight, or whether that is eviction prevention, or whether that's longer-term rental assistance. So it really does, it's individualized, and I know that's not the easiest answer, but because of our system, that's just kind of how we have to do it.
Representative Robbins, anything? Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions or discussion, members? Chair Howard.
Thank you, Chair Norris, Representative Gomez. I just want to thank you for your work and pioneering effort on this bill. It helped lay the groundwork to do some other housing aids as well. But I just wanted to double down on comments you made about that other aids don't have a sunset like this. And I can imagine reasons why a sunset was put in place as we were working to make this happen. But, you know, one reason you put a sunset like this is to evaluate how a program is working and to make an assessment as a legislature. Is the funding that we've set out here meeting its intended purpose? Is it having the impact that we want? And let's make that determination then. Should we continue doing this or should we stop doing this? And the evidence from the testimonies here and otherwise, to me, make an overwhelmingly strong case that we should continue this program. As folks have mentioned, needs are far greater, but really I think the genius of this bill is providing these resources so that local communities can respond in ways that fit best to meet those needs. And I really enjoyed hearing from some of the counties how they're meeting the moment. And so to me, you know, like I said, when you have a sunset, it gives you the chance to say, is this working or is this not working? And this is working. And so to me, it's crystal clear that we should have the sunset go away.
Great, thank you. The members, it looks like the pages are coming around with the county breakdown here for you. Chair Gomez.
Yeah, and just on the county breakdown, you'll see that there are two kind of components of the formula. One is based on population that has a minimum, and the other is based on student data, which is the McKinney-Vento numbers, which education people will know more about me, but are collected. I believe, I can't remember if it's once or twice each year. So those are the two components, and those are the runs for all the counties in the state. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Chair Gomez. Rep. Kozlowski.
Thank you, Chair Norris and Chair Gomez, for your Herculean work around ending homelessness in the state. Really, and to our community, I also want to thank our testifier, Ash, for sharing your story. I think it's really easy to sit in these committees, especially in the tax committee, that can feel kind of overwhelming and inundating and very number-centric. But there are people behind these numbers and statistics, and I think that is our job, is to really illuminate who is being impacted and the ways that the work that we're doing can hurt and add to the burden, or as we heard, go from somebody who was in really dire straits to flourishing and being able to live a full and rich life. I also want to thank our tribal collaborative, my nieces there from the tribal collaborative, just doing incredible work. I really strongly support and echo the comments that Chair Howard made in terms of why we need this sunset. I think we've heard really crystallizingly clear from the counties, these expenses are otherwise going to roll downhill to them, onto our EMS, onto our hospital systems, as we've heard, are already being strained. But also to our tribal nations. It's not included in this, but the work that I had done on local homelessness prevention aid with the tribal collaborative shared some data that half of those experiencing homelessness on reservations are children, youth, and elders. 77% meet the definition of chronically homeless. As well as 47% have chronic health conditions affecting their ability to work and secure housing. And so this part, the little things are the big things, being able to transfer from tribal nation to another. And I know that did happen previously. It's similarly where not every county is in the same situation. Tribes are the same way, and some are smaller or some have more acute challenges. And so just having that flexibility and honoring sovereignty to be able to maximize the dollars, I appreciate and speak in support. And I also just want to say really quick that in Duluth, we've got some numbers similarly alarming across the state, but because of the federal fallout in the hostile policies in Duluth, we haven't been able to do any new HRA housing vouchers. And that's really hard on our counties and our people working in housing, but especially on our kids and people trying to secure housing. And just to put a fine point on why this is so important, as we heard from the county, that this is money needed now. Our people don't have time to wait. My mom was one of those people who was waiting on a voucher, and 3 months after she passed away, right before I came to the legislature, we got a letter, finally we have a voucher for you. And so this is that lifeline, that lifeboat, and I just want to say thank you for fighting like our lives depend on it, because they really do.
Thank you. Representative Joachim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Chair Gomez, for working so tirelessly on this. I know when you started approaching it with homework starts at home, it was because you feel like I do, that if a child is more stabilized in their home life, they do better in school. All the data shows that if we can keep a kid in the same school district or same school for 3 years, they're way more likely to graduate, and that affects all of us. So I just want to thank you for the work on this and for pushing to make sure this is treated like all the other sports safety net systems that we have, that there's no expiration date.
Thank you. Anything else, members? All right. Chair Gomez, to wrap us up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thanks for the good conversation today, and for your consideration of, treating this flexible and critical county aid like the rest of the county aids. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, Chair Gomez renews her motion that House File 4561 be laid over for possible inclusion in the 2026 taxes bill. The bill is laid over. All right, I'll hand the gavel back over to Chair Gomez.
All right, we're doing a little shuffle. Up next is House File
Well, there's no reason.
4343 from Representative Lee. While Representative Lee gets moved up to the front of the room, she will move that House File 4343 be laid over for possible inclusion in the 2026 tax bill. There is an amendment in your packet titled A5 for your review as we get started here.
Yeah.
Welcome to your committee,
Yeah.
Rep. Lee. Would
Thank
you like to
you.
move your, the A5?
Yes, I'd like to move the A5.
Excellent. So Rep. Lee's moved the A5 amendment. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. The amendment's adopted. The bill is in the form the author would like. Representative Lee to House File 4343.
Thank you, Chair. I thought I would use a sign because the tech seems to have been failing the committee for the last couple of hearings. So hopefully that is helpful. Thank you, chairs and committee members, for the opportunity to present House File 4343, a bill that would help us modernize our sales tax code so that Minnesota taxpayers can stop subsidizing billion-dollar corporations. Most important for folks at home, my bill would also cut the sales tax rate for everyone because it broadens our tax base. In the last 40 to 60 years, there are two key ways that our economy has changed. First, we have transitioned from a goods-producing economy to a service-based economy. Nationwide, services made up 70% of personal consumption in last year, November 2025, up from 45% at the beginning of 1950. As you can see here, Minnesota has followed this trend. So we enacted sales tax in, I think, somewhere between 1965 and 68, and the red line is consumption of services. And so that kind of outpaced consumption of goods in about the mid-'80s. And that's really important for us to note. In real life, this looks like people renting clothes or bags instead of buying them, paying for lawn services instead of purchasing lawn mowers. Another way to measure this is to look at how much services contribute to national GDP. Since the early 1950s, the services sector has expanded from about just 1/2 of U.S. GDP to now more than 75% of it. And that growth has come in both absolute and relative terms. One way to think about this is that obviously the GDP pie has expanded, and also, right, like the services slice of that is much bigger than it's ever been. This trend matters because Minnesota taxes the majority of goods while exempting the majority of services. This means that our tax base to fund essential programs like housing, hospitals, or schools is at great risk and shrinking relative to the economy. And a second trend to note is that our economy has transitioned from people selling items door to door to targeted ads that flash across your screen and entice you to order food or drinks as you watch your sports games. Regardless of whether you call this digitization a service or an annoyance, one thing is clear. By exempting advertising services from sales tax, we are giving taxpayer dollars to the platforms and products seeking our attention on social media, internet search results, and websites, which seem to be packing more and more banner ads each day, each week, trying to grab our attention. Currently, Minnesota businesses pay about 48% of sales tax revenue. We saw this in the tax incidence report that Mr. Willett shared with us yesterday. Conversely, large tech platforms like Meta and Alphabet pay little to no taxes, while reaping in billions of dollars in revenues as they sell ads to us. Why would we give an unfair advantage to these billion-dollar corporations? My bill, House File 4343, gives Minnesota another option. House File 4343 would raise would raise about $600 million in revenues by taxing digital advertisements and out-of-home advertisements, the two areas of advertising that are projected to continue to grow. Because House File 4343 would widen the tax base, we are also able to reduce the statewide sales tax rate for everyone, lowering the combined rate down from 6.875 to 6.75. This is possible because, again, this allows the tax base to capture the growth of some of the largest and most profitable industries in the tech sector, which are currently exempt. And as a reminder, we saw yesterday in the review of the tax incidence study how regressive sales tax is. This bill would reverse that by widening the base and getting us higher in the suits index. And so I know we're short on time, so I'm going to turn this over to the testifiers who will go more into detail about the bill and provide context on why it is important for us as policymakers to consider revenue raisers like this in this changing economy. Thanks.
Thank you, Representative Lee. So we'll move to testifiers. We have a number of testifiers. So I'm going to call you up kind of in groups. I'm going to tell you if you're on deck. I'm going to time everybody. You have 2 minutes. First up is Eric Harris Bernstein. On deck is Dalton Danielson, and after that, Tanner Fritzinger. Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself as you get started.
Chair Gomez, Chair Davids, members of the committee, my name is Eric Bernstein. I'm the Coalition Director of We Make Minnesota. We advocate for a strong tax code and a budget sufficient to meet our public investment needs. We're very grateful for the opportunity to share our support for 4343. As we've heard, our economy is shifting towards services and increasingly digital services. The digital advertising industry alone has grown from $8 billion in 2008 to $258 billion in 2024. That's a rate of growth of over 3,000% compared to GDP growth of 156%, so 30 times growth compared to 2.5 times growth. So if we leave these industries exempt, we end up with a larger rate on everyone else. I've been sharing a little experiment that I did comparing sales tax revenues adjusted for sales tax rates. And so just as an example, South Dakota, they have a much broader sales tax base. They raise 30% more money per capita, even though their rate is 40% lower. And so when we leave our porous tax code, or our sales tax code porous in the way it is, we currently exempt more sales tax base than we actually tax. The result is a higher rate on everyone else, and that's not efficient. I know we're short on time, so I'll skip ahead and just say, I want to underscore the point that Representative Lee shared, because one argument against this policy, a common one, will be about business-to-business sales and tax pyramiding. This is an argument that gets trotted out, and I understand it in theory, but the reality is businesses do pay an enormous amount of sales tax in Minnesota. As Rep. Lee said, 48%, which is more than Minnesota households pay. The difference is paid by non-resident households. And so if you're in construction, if you're in retail, you are greatly affected by our sales tax rates. Right now, what we have is arbitrary exemptions for services and businesses operating in the digital economy. And so that means higher rates on all of us and a greater reliance on less stable forms of revenue like income taxes.
Thank you, Mr. Bernstein. That's
great. Thank you very much.
Thanks. All right, Dalton Danielson, welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself as we get started. Tanner Fritzinger, you're on deck.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, my name is Dalton Danielson, Fiscal Policy Director with the Minnesota Business Partnership. MBP represents CEOs and senior executives from Minnesota-based companies across healthcare, manufacturing, agriculture, and technology. Our members employ 1 in 6 Minnesotans statewide and compete every day in national and global markets. The Minnesota Business Partnership strongly opposes House File 4343. At its core, this bill imposes a sales tax on business inputs, not final consumer purchases, which are also often taxed. Taxing these inputs creates a tax pyramiding, embedding hidden taxes into prices that are ultimately passed on to consumers. This approach undermines transparency and violates long-standing principles of sound tax policy. Additionally, House File 4343 would impact every business in Minnesota, not just a narrow segment of the economy. While the bill is often described as targeting large technology companies, advertising is a critical tool used by manufacturers, retailers, healthcare providers, nonprofits, and small businesses alike. This proposal would raise costs across the board, affecting both Minnesota's headquarters economy and Main Street businesses trying to grow and compete. Just to reiterate, this would impact businesses from Lanesboro to Detroit Lakes, from the Iron Range in Duluth to Rochester, and from Rosemount to Farmington. All these employers, large and small, who rely on advertising to reach customers, expand operations, and hire workers. In addition, House File 4343 raises serious legal and administrative concerns. Digital advertising transactions routinely cross state lines, involving advertisers, platforms, servers, and audiences in multiple jurisdictions. Taxing these transactions without a clear and workable sourcing framework exposes Minnesota to Commerce Clause challenges and the risk of multiple taxation. Similar taxes in other states, primarily Maryland and Washington, are already being litigated, putting projected revenues at risk. Finally, members, I'll conclude with Minnesota's economic strength depends on a tax system that is predictable, transparent, and competitive. For these reasons, the Minnesota Business Partnership respectfully but firmly urges the committee to oppose House File 4343.
Thank you for your testimony. Tanner Fritzinger, you are up. Brian Cook, you're on deck. Please introduce yourself for the record as you get started with your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Gomez, Chair Davids, and members of the committee. My name is Tanner Fritzinger, and I'm a political affairs coordinator for the Minnesota Association of Professional Employees. We are a labor union representing over 18,000 state workers across all agency, boards, and commissions. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of House File 4343. MATE members work in all segments of state service, whether it is ensuring that our food and water supply is safe, providing a better life for our military veterans, or even taking care of animals at the Minnesota Zoo. MATE members are significant contributors to the high quality of life that is enjoyed by Minnesotans. Currently, the state's forecasted structural imbalance threatens Minnesota's ability to continue to deliver these services and programs that our neighbors rely on. Repealing the tax exemption on advertising services is crucial in addressing the structural imbalance, creating parity in advertisement tax policy, and raising the revenues needed to continue to deliver essential services in the state now and into the future. House File 4343 is a meaningful proposal that would raise revenues from an industry that continues to experience massive growth. This legislation's inclusion of taxing digital advertising on large platforms such as Facebook or Google, in addition to the taxation of advertising on billboards, is essential in broadening the tax code to include more modern streams of revenue. As the cost of delivering essential state services continue to rise and strain our current resources, modernizing the Minnesota's tax base to include emerging industries is the forward thinking required to continue to deliver the programs that MATE members administer. House File 4343 is a step in the right direction, and we ask that members of this committee support its passage. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Up next, Brian Cook. On deck is Sarah Frank. Welcome, Mr. Cook.
Good morning, Chair Gomez, members of the House Taxes Committee. My name is Brian Cook. I'm the Director of Tax, Fiscal Policy, and Elections for the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber represents more than 6,300 businesses of all sizes in all corners of the state with more than 500,000 employees. Appreciate the opportunity to share our concerns with Representative Lee's House File 4343 as amended by the A5 amendment, which would expand the state's sales tax to certain primarily digital advertising services. Maryland was the first state to pass a digital advertising tax. Since its enactment in 2021, it has been mired in litigation related to the Internet Tax Freedom Act and the Commerce Clause. Like in Maryland, enacting a digital advertising tax would be a risky proposition that could create additional budget pressure and uncertainty if it were overturned. It's also important to note that as a sales tax, the cost will be borne by the purchasers of these advertising services in Minnesota, who are businesses of all kinds and all sizes, which will increase the cost of operations and likely ultimately be passed along to Minnesota consumers. While the bill cuts the general sales tax rate, it would still be at a minimum a 6.375% cost increase for these services. And that's a baseline minimum since local sales tax rates would also apply. So for example, in the higher tax cities of St. Paul and Golden Valley, that would be over 9%. As a reminder, as we saw in the tax incidence study presentation yesterday from the Department of Revenue, businesses pay a lot of sales taxes. 31% of the total business taxes paid compared to 18% for individuals. Expanding the sales tax base to also include certain professional services related to advertising will also have a negative impact on the Minnesota companies who provide those services and could place them at a disadvantage to out-of-state competitors. Minnesota already ranks among the highest tax states for both individuals and businesses. Instead of closing the gap with our peer and neighboring states, this legislation would widen it. We urge you to reconsider this approach, instead prioritize policies that strengthen the long-term economic viability of Minnesota through growth. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next, Sarah Frank, and then Deb Peters on deck.
Good morning, Chair Gomez, Co-Chair Davids, and the members of the Tax Committee. For the record, my name is Sarah Frank, and I'm a dental assistant, and I work at HCMC for 28 years. I'm also the president of AFSCME Local 2474, which is one of 2 locals at HCMC that represents around 2,700 workers. I'm here today to express support for House File 4343, and I want to thank Representative Lee for authoring it. The combination of social media and smartphones might be one of the most behavior-altering systems that's ever been created. Social media companies have very sophisticated algorithms and are tailor-made to each of us, They have used that profile to create an incredibly profitable advertising sector. Meta generated $200 billion in revenue, nearly all of it from advertising. YouTube earned $6 billion in advertising and subscription revenue. Amazon earned $68 billion in advertising revenue. This sector of the economy is rapidly growing, and we believe that now is the time to tap into these revenues so that those profiting greatly at the expense of our mental health can at least contribute to the life-saving medical care provided at hospitals like HCMC. As you have heard, HCMC is not in a good spot. Our uncompensated care has grown substantially over the last decade, and this will get much worse if we do not find more functional source of supporting those without insurance. Unfortunately, right now, we are going the opposite direction. Changes to MA eligibility will likely push out a lot of our patients from having coverage, resulting in more uncompensated care. We are not on a path to remaining open much longer, and we need your help here at the Capitol to fix this before it's too late. For my entire career, nearly 3 decades, I have been helping treat patients who often do not have anywhere else to go. Some of our patients have very serious medical and mental challenges. Some have medical assistance, which limits them who will see them. Some folks do not have any insurance at all, and it is routine for our patients to come in wearing the wristbands from other hospitals who have stabilized them and sent them to us. We do not turn people away. We understand that we are the backstop for everybody. We are the safety net, and without us, our patients would overwhelm area hospitals and cause similar financial challenges to what we are experiencing now. We need your help so we can continue to help others and keep HCMC functional. House File 4343 would be a great way to raise money from some of the most profitable corporations on earth to keep us operating and to help address uncompensated care across Minnesota. Please support House File 4343. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Frank. Deb Peters, you're up. After is Ellery Roski. Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself for the record as you get started.
Good morning, Chair, Madam Chair Gomez and Chair Davids. My name is Deb Peters, and I'm a recovering state senator from the state of South Dakota. So if you have a question about South Dakota sales tax, please let me know. But today I'm here talking on behalf of the Americans for Digital Opportunity. It's an organization that's powered by the Internet Coalition. And I would like to express our strong opposition to House Bill 4343 as amended. This bill would actually impose a tax on all digital and non-digital advertising services with exceptions for print, radio, and TV ads. This isn't a tax on Meta or Google and all of the advertising. It is it's an add-on tax, and it's passed down through to the purchasers who are doing the advertising. This is not a tax on the big companies. So it's important to note that since we've not heard that. Not only does this bill have the exclusions and picks winners and losers, it also raises serious legal concerns that we've already talked about. But also your local businesses, your retailers, your businesses of all sizes, that Minnesota's consumers would actually feel the impact of this bill. They're the ones that we're going to be paying this tax, not the large internet companies that we've heard about. Advertising is one of the most effective and affordable tools that your businesses here in Minnesota have to reach their customers and stay competitive. Taxing advertising and advertising-related services raises costs for everyone. Increasing expenses or inputs by levying additional taxes or new taxes will only trickle down to the smaller local Minnesota businesses that are using all of these tools to tell their story and to grow their consumer base. they will feel the repercussions. By reducing the small business opportunity to tell their story and put their businesses on the map is going to have an effect on your budgets. It will reduce their growth, their income, it'll reduce your gross income tax on corporations, and it will reduce the owner's income and their income tax. In turn, also slowing the growth in income tax and the sales tax collected by the state of Minnesota. The economic impact in Minnesota could be significant. Advertising supports over 550,000 jobs here and drives over $200 billion in economic activity across the state. So this bill threatens all of that activity, and the last thing, and it's the last thing that should be done in Minnesota. And I'll wrap up with that, and please reject the idea of taxing the very tools that help your small businesses.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next, Ellery Roski, and on deck is Paul Egger. Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself as you get started.
Good morning, Chair Gomez and members of the committee. My name is Ellery Roski. I'm the mom of 3. My oldest is in kindergarten and attends after-school care. My middle is in child care center part-time, and my youngest here with me today is home with me. He's 2 months, thanks to the Minnesota Paid Family and Medical Leave Act. Growing a family, and I'm here to support and testify in support of HF 4343. Growing a family is not as simple as it once was to decide how many children we wanted to try to have and when to have them. We needed to consider the cost of childcare. In fact, it was the factor that weighed most heavily on our family. When this one begins childcare, our annual cost will be over $37,000, and that's just part-time care thanks to the support we have from family. In addition to childcare, babies require a lot of stuff. As a Minnesota resident, we have to pay taxes on a lot of that stuff, like baby shampoo, lotion, and sunscreen. Sure. But the companies that are advertising those products to me, companies that magically find you as soon as you are pregnant, do not have to pay taxes on that advertising services. Too many elected officials understand this childcare crisis. They too understand that we should be publicly funding childcare so that it's low cost or even no cost to families like mine, and so that the teachers can earn wages on par with K-12 teachers. They even say that funding childcare, that they support funding childcare, but in the next breath say there's no money to do it. By simply including digital advertising services in the Minnesota sales tax, we could collect hundreds of millions of dollars. That says pretty clearly that there is money to support childcare, and that for all of the other social services we know make our communities thrive. Minnesota families are tired of excuses. We want to contribute to our communities, and our state is being told that there isn't enough money to support childcare or education. We're making sure that kids are housed and fed, when clearly there's money for tax breaks for wealthy companies. A budget is a moral document. It shows where our priorities are, and it's well past time to prioritize our kids and family over the wealthy corporations who can do more than pay their fair share. I urge you to support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for bringing your baby. We're happy to have them. All right, up next, Paul Egger, and on deck is Nan Madden.
Now we have to vote. Chair Gomez, Chair Davids,
The baby
members
wants
of
you
the
to
House Taxes Committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today on behalf of our 21,500 members who are independent contractor, real estate salespersons, and brokers to respectfully oppose House File 4343. The overwhelming majority of our independent contractor, our realtors are independent contractors. They're small business owners and entrepreneurs who pay their own expenses, cover their own marketing costs, and take on their own financial risk. As small business owners, investing in advertising is critical to generating clients that translate into income. Typical advertising that realtors engage in that would appear to be taxed under this bill include marketing a seller's home on the multiple listing service, paying for online listing promotion on real estate websites, search engine marketing to ensure listings are visible to buyers, social media advertising for open houses or new listings, professional graphic design for marketing materials, neighborhood signage and directional ads associated with listings, subscribing to referral networks, using customer relationship management tools such as email, text, follow-up systems, and using tools like Google Analytics to track website behavior to understand if their marketing is effective. Expanding the sales tax to advertising services will increase operating costs for our members. This will have a regressive impact that will disproportionately affect newer realtors and small brokerages who rely more on advertising than established realtors who have a strong business of repeat buyers and referrals. It will result in more costs being passed on to consumers, and it will likely mean reduced marketing campaigns, which may limit realtors' ability to promote homes as effectively as they do currently, negatively impacting sellers and decreasing buyers' exposure to homes that would best fit their needs. Thank you for the opportunity again to testify to share our concerns in opposition to House File 4343.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next is Nan Madden, and finally, we're going to hear from a testifier who came last week, who's a person from Duluth, and we'll do that via video. But Ms. Madden, welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chair Davids, my name is Nan Madden. I'm Director of the Minnesota Budget Project. Thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts on this issue. We believe the state should raise revenues to protect the public services that Minnesotans in every corner of the state count on. Harmful federal actions are putting more pressure on state and local governments to step in to meet the needs of their residents. H.R. 1 makes drastic funding cuts to affordable health care through Medicaid and food assistance through SNAP, as well as other public services. H.R. 1 permanently shifts more responsibility to fund and deliver those services to our state and counties, while cutting federal funding to the state and constraining our ability to fund services. Additional federal actions have targeted Minnesota with threats to take away federal funding for Medicaid, child care assistance, and other basic assistance. And the ICE Metro surge has created real economic damage to Minnesotans and their communities, not to mention the harm to basic human rights and safety. While the recent state February forecast projects a small surplus in 28-29, things could easily swing in the other direction. We think that sales tax modernization could play a role in an overall package of tax changes that moves us forward to a tax system that is more progressive and adequately and sustainably funds the public services that Minnesotans count on. While we don't currently have a position on this particular revenue raiser, I thank Representative Lee for bringing this bill forward to explore this option. This is one of a number of ideas before the legislature that seeks to modernize our sales tax code by lowering the rate and expanding the base. As you've heard, the sales tax largely focuses on goods but not services. This is a historical practice that does not match our modern economy. And this bill and similar proposals ask whether the state can afford to maintain this somewhat arbitrary distinction, which is eroding the ability of the sales tax to fund public services. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. All right, we're going to try the video thing. We'll see how we do.
Chambers of the committee. My name is Shannon Richardson, and I have been in child care for 15 years. I'm the CEO with Nurseries.
Is this live or just here? It's a video, yeah. I just feel bad because she drove down last week and we didn't get to it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I was like, you can't be live.
I think if there's an option to,
I'm currently the CEO of City Nursery.
we're just, if there's an option to read her testimony, let's go with that.
Oh, it's right here.
Please introduce yourself for the record as you get started with your testimony.
Yes, thank you. My name is Kelly Martinson. I will read Shannon Richardson's testimony. She was here last week, but unfortunately couldn't make it this week, as if I am her. Good morning, Chair Gomez and members of the committee. My name is Shannon Richardson, and I've been in childcare for 17 years. I'm currently the CEO with University Nursery Schools, a nonprofit in Duluth. We have 5 centers, 450 students, and 150 staff. I am here to testify in support of HF 4343 to extend sales tax to advertising. My family, like all families, spends a lot of money on things in our state that corporations spend millions of dollars advertising to us. But the corporations are not paying sales tax on advertising services. As a child care provider, I hear from legislators that they want to support child care, but I am told there's no money. I'm frustrated at that sentiment, yet hopeful that together we can find a solution. There is money, and not using it to fund infrastructure like child care is harmful. Child care allows our workforce and our communities to thrive. High-quality care is expensive to provide. Right now, the bulk of that cost is paid by families, but it's also subsidized by our staff. Providers have historically made low wages because if we charge families more to pay teachers more, we price families out of care. Low wages increase the already high staff turnover that the field is prone to. Excuse me. We know that funding makes an impact. The Great Start compensation grants have allowed providers to increase wages and benefits in the field, but it's nowhere near enough to keep our most qualified and quality staff. I have shed tears over losing staff meant for this field simply because they haven't been able to afford to stay in it. There are centers that still settle for subpar staff because they can't hold on to quality staff that they need and deserve. A fully funded system would allow us to support staff much better than we do now. Our staff have a lot of tools, but none of them are specialists. Stabilizing our field, making sure we have the means to hire and support high-quality staff, and investing in our children benefits our entire state. I urge you to pass this bill, as these wealthy corporations themselves are only able to make their millions because their employees have care. Minnesota families deserve affordable, high-quality care. Teachers also deserve a livable wage and benefits, and high-quality staff directly impact those that matter the most, the kids. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. That is the end of the pre-filed testimony. Is there anyone else present who wishes to testify on this bill? Seeing none, I will move. Oh, welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself for the record as you get started with your testimony.
I am Nathaniel M. Olson, the disability advocate for the state of Minnesota. I'm in opposition of this bill, and here's the reason why. I have done research on the spending of Minnesota, okay? I do have a graph, and with federal grants that we're getting is $42 billion. You know what the other revenue in the state of Minnesota is $79 billion. We have raised up so much taxes in the state of Minnesota, and now, right now, we are looking at a bill that is going to digitalize more taxes. This is not gonna help Minnesota families at all. This is gonna make it hard for stuff to be informed and stuff. Right now, I could literally tell you where all of this money is going. And the highest right now is K-12. The second is the Department of Human Services. So I'm urging you to say no to this bill because this is not going to help. We already have a motion of car tabs going to be $1,300. I think that is ridiculous in the state of Minnesota. We are now listed #1 with the highest taxes in the state of Minnesota. We just beat California. More taxes is not gonna help Minnesota families. Do you know how many businesses left the state of Minnesota? 13,000 businesses left the state of Minnesota. And you're telling me that you want to bring another bill that could hurt more businesses? I think this is ridiculous. We need lower taxes for people to live in the state of Minnesota, not raise them up. It's going to be very, very hard for people to afford stuff. So I hope this side of the committee thinks and really thinks on this. Is this going to help Minnesota or make Minnesota worse? Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else present who wishes to testify on House File 4343? Not seeing any, we will move to member discussion. Representative Joy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this one's for the bill author. Would this be considered a business-to-business tax, Representative Lee?
Representative Lee.
I guess I'd defer to Ms. Hagler on that.
Or the department, either or.
Ms. Hagler.
Madam Chair and Representative Joy, the tax would be imposed when the sale of the service is made. So if it is a business who is purchasing the service, then the business would be paying the tax.
Representative Joy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So what we're hearing is it's a business-to-business tax is what we're hearing, I guess. And it just, we're moving a tax here again, as we just heard testimony on both sides, and I understand what we're doing here to increase taxes, to save a little bit over here. It just seems like to me that we're just shuffling money. And I think I understand the contents of the bill, but I think we need to really start reducing the tax level in Minnesota to keep people here. So thank you.
Thank you. Representative Weiner?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess mine is not so much as a question as a statement. We've used, or it's been used several times in this committee and other places, the term revenue raiser, which is really deceptive. This is another tax on consumers. Businesses and the big names that were mentioned are not going to just take that out of the profit margin, they're going to pass it on to the consumer. And unfortunately, what's going to happen with these small businesses who have these available advertising means, they're going to have to pass that on to their consumers as well. So the hundreds of millions of dollars worth of revenue that was discussed here is not going to come from the big businesses that has been mentioned. It is going to come on the backs of the taxpayers in this state once again. When we're hearing again and again and again that people are overtaxed, and we have lost so much in adjusted gross income over the last 5 years. We've lost businesses, one of the highest tax states, which was mentioned by one of the testifiers. It seems absolutely insane to me that we would add more taxes onto the people in the state who are taxed enough already. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Weiner. Representative Lee?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I actually did want to respond to these comments and also some of the testimony that we heard earlier about the impact on small businesses. As we heard from Mr. Bernstein, right, the digital ad industry is a $1 billion industry that is only growing. And so, I would say when you look at our digital economy and the internet now, a lot of the small businesses that we have in Minnesota actually don't have these multi-million dollar advertising budgets. They're using free influencers and they're using other ways of doing their own free advertising. And so I really refocus us back to, the corporations that we're trying to target here. And again, the question is not what are we taxing or what is the rate, right? But it's who are we taxing, right? And right now we are not taxing these corporations that are buying ads in Minnesota. And so I just like to make sure folks understand that.
Thank you, Representative Lee. Representative Smith?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Representative Lee. Maybe I'll just first ask a question of Representative Lee, and then I have a comment on the bill itself. I believe the widening of this tax base, part of your bill is also to lower the sales tax. Is that correct, and could you expand on that in this bill?
Representative Lee?
Yes, that is the goal.
Representative Smith?
So on the A5, it's on 2.6 and 2.7, members of the committee. This would take the sales tax, which is currently at 6.5, down to 6.375. So there's a couple of ways to look at this. One is we are making a more fair landscape in our larger business landscape. There was a group from realtors here that argued against this bill because they don't want to have the sales tax trickle down to them, which I understand. But at the same time, they're realtors who are selling homes. And when contractors build those homes, they pay sales taxes on the lumber and other resources that are used. Businesses pay sales tax on the office supplies that they use. We heard from a childcare provider. They're going to pay sales tax when they have to like run out and grab wipes that they left out on. And all of those groups are going to save money on this bill because the overall sales tax is going to go down. When we widen our sales tax base, we are able to lower it for everyone else. And the second thing I want to say is, as we're talking about the digital landscape, that is the landscape that we are going to be existing in the future. Business is going to continue to get more and more online. And as that graph shows that Representative Lee brought in, we need to be moving our sales tax base to the digital landscape to better reflect how commerce is done in this day. So I think this is a great bill, a great starting discussion. Thank you, Representative Lee.
Thank you, Representative Smith. Up next, Representative Hewitt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Wiener, that was really interesting, your discussion there. I hear where you're going, and we're all going through this right now. The economy has definitely changed most of our spending habits in the last year, and so I get what you're saying is that tax, tariff, whatever it is, it goes back to the consumer. But I am interested in this particular tax, as we as legislators throughout the years have looked at places that have caused problems for us in other areas, such as the cigarette tax, or we're seeing today the marijuana tax that we're putting on things, and maybe we call them sin taxes. I don't know what the word is, but we know that we need to come up with a way to start controlling the internet. And we need to come up with a way that would start slowing down that traffic. I believe this. And this seems like, and I'm going to go against my realtors, 10,000 apparently are going to vote against me now. But
More than that.
yeah, there's more than that. You're right. Sorry, Chair. But I think that this is a starting practice, because even as a politician, I'm going to get taxed on this now, and I'm okay with that. If we can start slowing the process down and putting more of an equal playing field, because that's another thing we do with tax, right? But I'm just not looking at this as a revenue gainer. I'm looking at this as a possible way to probably slow this down. I mean, in the greater Minnesota, they still have radio stations and newspapers and things like that. Maybe if we had a way to slow the media tax here in the metro, maybe we would bring back radio stations and newspapers again. So it's just a philosophical thought on the whole thing. And I welcome the debate from the other side here, because I really do think that there's a lot to be said here. And this is an area that we really got to dig into and see how we can start slowing it down a little bit and catching up with where things are at. And it definitely is the way we're living our life today. So thank you for the indulgence here, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Hewitt.
Madam Chair, since my name was invoked, can I
Representative
respond?
Wiener.
Thank you. Just a suggestion, Representative Hewitt, is if you're okay with more taxes, how about we have this as an opt-in thing? That if people are okay with higher taxes, you can opt in and pay more taxes, and the rest of us don't. Well, let's just look at people who are okay with paying more.
Yeah, let's go through the chair if we want to go back and forth, or else we could just not, but it's up to y'all. Okay, Representative Hollins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'll try to be brief, because my comment is more philosophical than directly related to the policy. But I appreciate you bringing this bill, Representative Lee, and I'm so disappointed to hear everybody saying, well, the taxes won't work, they're just going to get passed down to consumers. We hear this again and again and again. You can't do increased minimum wage, they'll just get passed down to consumers. You can't ask people to be held accountable, it just gets passed down to consumers. At what point are we going to say, we're Minnesotans and we're not going to be held hostage by large corporations? Like, this is not the reality we want to live in. We just heard from people who couldn't find housing, who were suffering from addiction and needed services, parents who can't afford their childcare, and yet we've got billionaires here, and we're like, well, there's nothing we can do. They just keep getting richer, and we just have to suffer through it. Like, at some point, we need to come up with solutions. Like, I'm tired of hearing people say, this is never going to work. Then bring something that is going to work. Because it's not working for Minnesotans right now. And we've heard it again and again and again in testimony and in letters. And the fact is, like, Mark Zuckerberg owes us money, period. We deserve to have people with housing, with food, with medical care that is stable. And if you don't think taxes are the right way, please bring another solution, because this just isn't sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Hollins. Is there any further member discussion? Representative Johnson.
So, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Question I have, I was going to start off with a question. The amendment, and I just want to make sure I read this correctly, that this does not apply towards newspapers, periodicals, magazines, publishing, radio, broadcasting, television broadcasting, correct? I believe that's correct.
Representative Lee.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to confirm that
Representative
because as a small business, and I mentioned it this morning in workforce, that Minnesota has fallen towards the bottom in percentage of new businesses being started year over year. Small businesses start as small businesses. Small businesses like me are finding it harder and harder to afford these type of advertising, TV, periodicals, direct mails, and stuff like that. So what have we found? We have found we can go digital. And I'm doing that as my business. And I went, okay, I can't compete with the big boys. I'm a small business. And so now I found out we can do Facebook ads. We can do even Roku. We can do so many of these things, and it's cheap. It's cheap, so we can afford that, so we can get out there. What this bill does is then turns around and slaps the face of small business people and saying, nope, there you go. We found another way to make money, and we're going to make it harder and harder for your small business to grow and succeed again. So that's why I think this is a bad bill, because it hits small businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Johnson. Chair Joachim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Lee, for being creative and bringing this forward for discussion. Can you remind us again how this changes the overall sales tax base?
Representative Lee.
Yes, thank you. So I know Representative Smith pointed this out earlier. You'll see on line 2.7 that it brings the sales tax rate down to 3.75, but because Minnesota voters elected to pay more taxes to protect our trails and the wilderness, we have the legacy tax, and then there are other taxes. So in effect, it's a sales tax rate of 6.75.
Chair Joachim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That sounds like a good savings for some of our small businesses.
All right, thank you, Representative Joachim. Is there any further discussion to House File 4343? Chair Davids.
Well, thank you so much. This bill is never going to work. The taxes won't go to the people. It just gets passed on to consumers. Lowering rates. I'm just a simple farm boy from Fillmore County. And with what my good friend Chair Joachim just said, she says good savings for business, not in a timeout. You lower the rates, but this bill raises $600 million. That doesn't sound like a good deal for business, not for my business. So what really disturbs me about this bill is we just had the suits index yesterday. If you look at sales taxes on the suits index, it's very regressive. It's very regressive. This bill, don't make no mistake about it. We say we're for the poor. If you vote for this bill, you're not for the poor. You're raising taxes on the poor. Now, you raise taxes on somebody like me, whatever. But I'm not here to raise taxes on the poor. I refuse to do that, and that's exactly what this bill does. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Let the record reflect that Representative Davids wants us to raise his taxes, I'm pretty sure. Representative Lee.
Yeah, so, we don't have an analysis on this, but arguably, when you look at the suits index, when you expand the tax base, you actually improve your suits index number and you make sales tax more progressive. And so, yes, absolutely true that, right, like yesterday's tax incidence reports, again, showed us how regressive the sales tax is. But if you want to solve that problem, if you genuinely want to solve that problem, you would widen the tax base. That is a proven way to make it more progressive. Should I do closing?
Yes, please, Representative Lee.
Okay, thanks. So I did want to address some of the points about like litigation and administration, which I guess didn't come out in the member discussion. But just did want to point out that the Maryland ad tax bill has been in place for about 5 years. It's still collecting revenues, and part of their hang-up is a disclaimer language that was part of how that bill was drafted. We don't have that in this bill, so that would not be a problem here. The Washington bill has some issues because it is strictly only digital ads. That's not the case here as well, and so I want folks to go away understanding that this bill is actually drafted intentionally to be robust, and so that's not something that you need to worry about in terms of litigation, just because other states have had issues with their ad tax bills. I think for me, the most important thing that I want folks to understand is that past legislatures have been able to get away with not modernizing the tax code, but we're at a pretty critical juncture, right? We have a changing economy, and as some of the testifiers here today showed us, there's been, our economy is also feeling the strain of a growing K economy, and all the while, right, our tax base is shrinking relative to the growth of the economy just because it's changing. We also know that because of H.R. 1, there are billions of dollars that will be cut to the state budget. And so when Minnesota exempts the vast majority of services, including all of this rapidly growing digital sector, this is a major problem for our state. While we have to still fund childcare, schools, government services, and healthcare in our modern economy. So again, the question is, who pays for our outdated laws? That's Minnesotans in every corner of the state. We pay higher taxes because of outdated laws that don't reflect our new economy, which has evolved in the last 60 years. House File 4343 helps us solve this problem by broadening the tax base so that it reflects the truth of our modern world. This helps Minnesotans towards a stronger and more stable budget. And so, today, the argument is, we are trying to tax billion-dollar corporations so that we can lower taxes on everyone else in Minnesota. Thanks.
Thank you, Representative Lee. With that, Representative Lee will renew her motion that House File 4343, as amended, be laid over for possible inclusion in the 2026 tax bill. The bill is laid over. Chair Davids, next meeting tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Chair Gomez, for a great meeting. Tomorrow's meeting is another page turner. I don't know if I'll be able to sleep tonight. House File 495 West, House File 4321 Zalesnikar, an IGO bill, House File 3902, a Duran bill, 4161, and members, there's space on House File 3755 for authors. It's the public finance bill. I hope you'll join me in that effort.
Speaking of exciting bills, the highlight of the year, the public finance bill, 3755. All right, looking forward to that. There being no further business in front of the committee, we are adjourned.